What if the person you loved, the one you trusted the most, betrayed you in the worst way possible? Imagine finding out your husband has been cheating on you all along. How would you react? Stay tuned to find out how the story unfolds. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do in this situation? For years, everything in Laura's life seemed perfect. She had a loving husband, Mark, a beautiful home, and a career she was proud of. They had been together for nearly a decade, and Laura believed they had built a solid foundation of trust and love. Mark was her best friend, her partner in every sense of the word, and she had always believed that nothing could shake the bond they shared. But that perfect world began to crack one fateful evening. It started innocently enough. Laura had just returned from a work trip and was excited to spend time with Mark. She walked into their home to find it unusually quiet. The house, which was always filled with the hum of daily life, felt strangely empty. Mark wasn't in the living room, where he usually relaxed after a long day at work, so Laura decided to check the study. As she opened the door, her eyes were immediately drawn to something she wasn't expecting to see. Mark's phone lay on the desk, the screen lit up with a message notification. Laura's heart skipped a beat as she looked closer, only to see the name of a woman she didn't recognize, Rachel. The message was brief, but loaded with something that sent a chill down her spine. "I miss you. Can't wait to see you again tonight." Laura's stomach turned. She hadn't expected this. Her mind raced, replaying the past few weeks. Mark had been distant, yes, but she had attributed it to work stress and nothing more. But now, standing there in the study, Laura felt the weight of the truth slowly sinking in. Something was terribly wrong. She tried to tell herself it was nothing, that maybe it was just a misunderstanding. But her gut told her otherwise. She picked up the phone, her fingers trembling, and unlocked it with the code she knew by heart. As she scrolled through the messages, her heart shattered with each passing text. They weren't just friendly exchanges. They were flirtatious, personal, and suggestive. Mark had been cheating on her for months, and Rachel was the one who had stolen his attention. Her breath became shallow, and the room seemed to spin. The betrayal felt like a weight on her chest that she couldn't escape from. Laura had always trusted Mark. She had never imagined he would do something like this to her, let alone with someone she didn't even know. The questions flooded her mind. How long had this been going on? Why hadn't she seen the signs? Had she been so blind to what was happening right in front of her? She felt nauseous as the reality hit her. The man she loved, the man she thought would never hurt her, had been lying to her for months. The trust she had placed in him had been shattered, and she didn't know how to deal with it. The silence in the room was deafening. Laura felt as if the walls were closing in on her. She stood there, staring at the phone, unable to process the gravity of what she had just discovered. The love of her life had betrayed her in the most intimate way possible, and now she was left with the painful task of deciding what to do next. After discovering Mark's secret, Laura was in a daze. Her emotions were in turmoil. Anger, confusion, disbelief, and heartbreak all mixed into a single overwhelming feeling. She needed answers, but she didn't know if she was ready to face Mark just yet. The phone in her hand felt like a heavy weight, but she couldn't seem to put it down. She stared at the screen, reading and rereading the messages between Mark and Rachel. Every word stung. After hours of pacing, Laura decided she couldn't wait any longer. She needed to confront him. No more pretending, no more second-guessing. She had to face the truth. She called Mark, and her voice, though composed, trembled as she spoke. "Mark, we need to talk. Now." Mark was taken aback by her tone. There was no small talk. No, "How was your day?" Just cold, hard urgency. "Laura, what's going on?" he asked, sounding concerned but not guilty. He clearly had no idea that she knew. "I'll be home in 20 minutes," she said flatly before ending the call. She knew she couldn't just confront him with the evidence and expect him to come clean. No, she had to hear it from his own mouth. As she prepared for the confrontation, she wasn't sure if she was prepared for the explosion of emotions that were about to follow. When Mark walked through the door, he seemed relaxed, as if everything was fine. He smiled and kissed her on the cheek as if nothing had changed. Laura looked at him. This man, her husband, who had shared her life for so long. And for the first time, she didn't feel like the woman he loved. She felt like a stranger. "Mark, we need to talk," she repeated, her voice unwavering. Mark nodded, sensing the seriousness in her tone, but still unaware of the truth she had uncovered. "Sure, what's going on?" he asked, taking a seat on the couch. Laura took a deep breath, sitting across from him. For a moment, she just stared at him, studying his face, looking for any sign of guilt, any hint that he knew what was coming. There was nothing. He looked calm, collected, almost too calm. "I know about Rachel," she said, her voice low but steady. "I saw the messages. I know you've been cheating on me for months." Mark's face immediately froze, his smile faltering. His eyes darted around the room as if searching for an escape or an explanation that wouldn't make him look guilty. But there was nothing he could say. Laura had already seen it all. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, but the way his voice cracked betrayed him. "Don't lie to me, Mark," she said, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and pain. "I saw the texts. I saw everything. You've been seeing Rachel behind my back, and I don't even know how long it's been going on." Mark stood up abruptly, pacing the room. "Laura, please, just listen to me." "No, Mark," Laura interrupted, standing up as well. "You don't get to explain this. There's nothing you can say that will make this okay. You've betrayed me. You've lied to me for months, and now you want to act like nothing happened?" Mark was visibly struggling, his mind racing for the right words, but nothing came. The guilt was all over his face, his inability to form a coherent sentence proving that he couldn't deny it. He knew what he had done. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said, his voice desperate. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. It just happened. I never wanted to hurt you, Laura." But Laura could hear the emptiness in his words. She could see the lack of real remorse in his eyes. The betrayal had been calculated, and now, with his back against the wall, he was trying to justify it. "You didn't want to hurt me?" she echoed, her voice rising with the intensity of her emotions. "You've been lying to me, sneaking around, and you didn't want to hurt me? You think that's how this works?" The truth was, she didn't know how she was supposed to feel anymore. Her love for him had been unconditional, her trust absolute. But now, that trust had been shattered, and she couldn't see how to fix it. Could she ever look at him the same way again? Could she forgive him for something so deep and painful? "I'm sorry," Mark said, his voice barely audible. But the apology felt hollow. His words had no weight, no sincerity behind them. How could he be sorry for something he had done willingly, without hesitation? How could he be sorry when it seemed like he had no real remorse? "I don't want your apology, Mark," Laura replied, her voice steady, though her heart felt like it was breaking. "I want the truth, and I want you to understand the pain you've caused. I don't even recognize you anymore." She stood up and walked toward the door, pausing before leaving. "I need space. I don't know if I can even look at you right now. Just go." With that, she left the room, leaving Mark standing there, unsure of what to do next. As he heard her footsteps echo down the hallway, he knew that everything had changed. And this time, he wasn't sure if there was a way back. The days after the confrontation were a blur for Laura. The pain and betrayal were overwhelming, and the emotional weight of what had happened was too much for her to bear. Mark's apology still echoed in her mind, but it felt empty, like words meant to placate her rather than show true remorse. She had given him everything, her trust, her love, her loyalty, and he had thrown it all away. The anger she had felt initially had given way to a deep sadness, a sadness that was suffocating her. Mark, for his part, seemed to be in a state of shock. He didn't leave the house, not wanting to go anywhere without Laura's presence. But she was distant, closed off, and even though he had apologized, he felt like the man he once was had been erased. The woman he loved was no longer the same, and he didn't know how to fix what he had broken. Days turned into weeks, and Laura's mind was consumed with a constant battle. She couldn't stop thinking about their life together, the years they had spent building a future. Was it all a lie? Had he been unfaithful all along? The more she thought about it, the more she realized that Mark had been living a double life. But there was a part of her that still longed for the man she had married, the man she had trusted. Could she ever get back to that place? Could she forgive him for what he had done? But the harder she tried to move on, the more her feelings conflicted. She wasn't sure if she wanted to forgive him, but she didn't want to throw everything away either. What did forgiveness even look like in a situation like this? Was it simply moving forward together, pretending everything was fine? Or did it require a deeper understanding, an acknowledgement of the hurt and the willingness to rebuild trust? One night, Mark sat across from Laura, both of them quiet, neither knowing how to start the conversation. Mark had asked for a chance to explain himself, to try to salvage what was left of their relationship. But how could he explain away the pain? How could he make sense of his actions? He had been selfish, disrespectful, and cruel, and now he was faced with the consequences. He had lost her, lost the trust they had built, lost her love, and he didn't know how to get it back. "Laura," Mark began, his voice shaky, "I know what I did was unforgivable. I've hurt you in ways I can't even begin to fix. I've spent every day since that night regretting what I did. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt our family." Laura's eyes met his, but there was no warmth in them. There was no understanding, no forgiveness, just the cold, hard truth. She had heard his words, but they were no longer enough. The betrayal was too deep, the hurt too raw. Her heart, once open to him, now felt closed off, locked away behind a wall of pain. "You've hurt me in ways you'll never understand, Mark," Laura said softly, her voice breaking. "You took everything I had given you, everything I trusted, and you destroyed it. You've torn apart the foundation of our marriage, and I'm not sure if I can ever trust you again." The tears in her eyes were the hardest part for Mark to bear. The woman who had once been his everything was now a stranger, a woman he had hurt beyond measure. He had broken something that may never be repaired. "I'm so sorry," Mark whispered, the weight of his regret hanging heavily between them. "I can't take back what I've done. I wish I could. But all I can do now is ask for your forgiveness." Laura shook her head. She wanted to forgive him. She wanted to believe that they could work through this, that they could rebuild what they had lost. But she knew that forgiveness wasn't that simple. It wasn't just about words. It was about trust. And trust had been shattered. She didn't know how to fix that. Didn't know if she even could. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Mark," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can ever get back to a place where I can trust you again. You've broken something in me that may never be repaired." The silence between them was suffocating. Both of them were stuck in a limbo, Mark desperate to make amends, and Laura unsure of whether she could ever get past the betrayal. For the first time in years, they were strangers to each other, trapped in a painful moment that neither of them knew how to escape. Mark stood up, pacing the room as he ran his hands through his hair. "I don't know what to do," he admitted, his voice filled with desperation. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make it right." "You can't fix it, Mark," Laura replied quietly. "Not overnight. Not with apologies. Maybe not at all. You've broken something inside of me, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you. Not like this." Mark fell silent, the reality of his actions crashing down on him. He had lost her. He had lost everything. And the guilt of knowing that he might never get it back was the heaviest burden he had ever carried. The weeks after the confrontation were filled with silence. The once lively home that Mark and Laura shared now felt like an empty shell. The tension between them was palpable, and every word, every glance, felt like a reminder of the growing chasm between them. Mark spent his days lost in regret, replaying every moment that had led to this point. But no matter how much he reflected, no answers seemed to emerge. He had betrayed the woman he loved, and now it seemed like there was no way back. Laura, on the other hand, struggled with the weight of the decision she was facing. Her emotions were tangled. Her heart ached for the man she had once known, the man who had been her best friend, but the betrayal was too deep. Could she ever forgive him? Could she even continue living with him, knowing that the trust they had built over the years was shattered? She found herself standing at a crossroads, unable to move forward, but also unable to turn back. One evening, after days of barely speaking to each other, Laura sat down with Mark. She had made up her mind. She could feel the tears burning in her eyes, but she had to say it. The truth was becoming too much to bear. "Mark," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. I've been thinking about us, about what we had, and what we've lost, and I've come to a decision." Mark looked at her, his face filled with worry, his heart pounding in his chest. He had been waiting for this moment, waiting to hear if she had decided to forgive him, if they could start rebuilding their relationship. But the words that left her lips were not what he had hoped for. "I can't do this anymore," Laura said quietly, her voice breaking. "I can't stay in this marriage. Not after what you've done. I thought I could get past it, that I could learn to trust you again, but I can't. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when I know the truth." Mark's world came crashing down. He couldn't speak at first, the shock rendering him speechless. He had never imagined that Laura would come to this conclusion. They had been through so much together. How could she just give up on everything? How could she walk away from the life they had built? "Laura," Mark pleaded, his voice raw with emotion. "Please don't do this. I love you. I made a mistake, a huge mistake, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right. I can't lose you. Please don't leave me." But Laura's resolve remained unshaken. She had spent countless sleepless nights torn between her love for Mark and the painful truth of his betrayal. She had tried to convince herself that she could move past it, but every time she looked at him, she was reminded of the hurt, of the lies. The man she had trusted most in the world had betrayed her, and the damage was too deep to ignore. "I don't think I can live with the constant reminder of what you did, Mark. Every time I look at you, I'll see the man who lied to me, who broke my heart. And I don't think I can live like that. I don't think we can be happy again." Mark felt like he was drowning. His chest tightened, and for the first time in a long time, he felt truly powerless. He had no control over the situation, no way to undo the damage he had done. He had lost her, and deep down, he knew there was nothing he could say to change her mind. "I understand," Mark whispered, tears welling up in his eyes. "I understand, Laura. I've destroyed everything. I know I've hurt you, and I'll live with that for the rest of my life. I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry." Laura's heart ached as she saw the man she had loved for so long crumble before her. But she knew, in that moment, that this was the right decision. She had spent years putting herself second, trying to make a marriage work when the foundation had already been cracked. It was time for her to take control of her life again, to move on from the man who had once meant everything to her, but had now become a stranger. I'm not doing this to hurt you, Mark. I'm doing this for me. I need to heal. I need to find myself again. And I can't do that if I stay here, constantly looking at you and wondering if you'll hurt me again. Mark nodded, unable to speak anymore. The pain was too much, but he understood. She had made her choice, and he couldn't change it. As Laura walked out of the room, her heart heavy with grief, she knew she was doing the right thing. It wasn't easy. It wasn't what she wanted, but it was necessary. She had to let go, not just of Mark, but of the version of herself that had been consumed by this relationship. She needed to rediscover who she was, to reclaim her own life. For Mark, the road ahead was dark. He had lost the woman he loved, and the pain of his own choices would haunt him forever. But he also knew that it was a consequence of his own actions. He had destroyed something beautiful, and now he had to live with the fallout. The days following the breakup were some of the most challenging of Laura's life. She had made the difficult decision to walk away from her marriage, but the weight of it still pressed heavily on her heart. For years, she had been devoted to Mark, trusting him with everything she had. And now, she was facing a future without him, a future that seemed uncertain and unfamiliar. In the beginning, there were moments when Laura questioned her decision. She wondered if she had made a mistake, if perhaps she could have forgiven Mark and tried to make their marriage work. The love she once had for him lingered, and the hurt was still fresh. But each time she thought about the betrayal, the lies, the secrets, the broken trust, she reminded herself why she had chosen this path. Mark had cheated. He had broken the sacred trust they shared, and though she had loved him deeply, she couldn't ignore the pain that had come with his actions. She couldn't live a life of doubt, of wondering if he would hurt her again. Trust, once shattered, was incredibly hard to rebuild. And the reality was that the love she had for him had been tainted, forever changed by the betrayal. For the first few weeks, Laura stayed at a friend's house, needing space to process everything. She spent time reflecting on her life, her choices, and what she wanted moving forward. Being away from the house, away from the reminders of her life with Mark, gave her the clarity she desperately needed. She realized that, for the first time in a long time, she was free. Free from the toxic cycle of betrayal and hurt that had defined her relationship. It wasn't long before she started to feel a sense of empowerment, a sense of reclaiming her own identity. She started spending more time doing things that made her feel good about herself. She reconnected with friends she had neglected over the years, found new hobbies, and even began traveling to places she had always wanted to visit. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the loneliness crept in, but she knew she was on the right path. And then, one afternoon, as Laura was sitting in a cafe sipping coffee and reading a book, she received an unexpected text from Mark. He hadn't reached out to her in weeks, respecting her request for space. But now there was a message from him. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," the text began. "I know I've hurt you more than I can express. I've been to therapy, and I've been working on myself. I know I can't change what I did, but I hope one day you'll be able to forgive me." Laura stared at the text for a moment, the emotions swirling within her. She could feel the old wounds reopening, the hurt that Mark's betrayal had caused coming back to the surface. But she also felt something else: strength. She had moved on. She had built a life for herself without him. The truth was, Laura didn't know if she would ever forgive Mark completely. Maybe time would heal some of the pain, but the scar of his betrayal would always remain. And while the past would always be a part of her, she realized she no longer needed Mark to validate her worth. She had learned to find her strength on her own. Laura didn't respond immediately. She took her time, allowing herself to process the message. After a few days, she finally sent a simple reply. "I'm glad you're seeking help, Mark. but I've made my decision. I need to move forward, and I need to do that on my own." That was all she said. She didn't need to explain herself further. She didn't need to make excuses or offer him false hope. Her decision had been made, and she was finally at peace with it. From that moment on, Laura focused on the future. She spent time healing, not just from the betrayal, but from the emotional weight of holding on to a relationship that had not served her well. It wasn't easy, but with each passing day, she felt stronger. She was no longer defined by her marriage to Mark. She was Laura, the woman who had overcome the pain, who had rebuilt her life, and who was now ready to embrace whatever came next. Months passed, and Mark continued to work on himself. He had lost Laura, and though the regret haunted him, he knew it was his own doing. The man he had been before the affair was gone, and in its place was a man who had learned the hard way that betrayal had a high cost. He had destroyed the trust in his marriage, and though he regretted it deeply, he understood that no amount of apologizing would bring Laura back. As for Laura, she found happiness again, on her own terms. She didn't need anyone else to complete her. She was whole. She had learned to love herself again, and in doing so, she realized that she had given herself the freedom to grow, to become someone new. In the end, Laura found closure. Not through Mark's apologies, but through her own journey of self-discovery. She learned that sometimes walking away was the bravest thing you could do. It wasn't easy, and it didn't come without pain, but it was the first step toward healing. And in that healing, she found peace,